Welcome to Detailed, an original podcast by RCAT. This is a show where we uncover lessons learned to help you navigate your next project. I'm Cherise Lakeside, Senior Specification Writer at RDH Building Science, and your host. My guests today are Dave Hardister, Principal, and Andra Riegler, Project Manager/Architect from Woodblock Architecture in Portland, Oregon. Dave has 36 years of experience in the AEC industry, with 30 of those years as a licensed architect. He is a 1987 graduate of NC State School of Design and is one of the 4 founders of Woodblock Architecture, which was established in 2015. Prior to Woodblock, Dave was a part owner of a design-build company for 11 years as the principal in charge of the architecture component of the business. Dave has a diverse background in project typologies, including multifamily, hospitality, adaptive reuse, and fire station design. Dave's primary role is in project delivery and working directly with staff. Andra is a newer resident of the Pacific Northwest, moving to Portland in 2018 from Atlanta, Georgia, where she worked at a large-scale multifamily-focused firm in Buckhead. Andra brings many years of experience in multifamily architecture. Since starting with Woodblock, her portfolio of work has gained diversity in project types like retail, adaptive reuse, medical offices, and hospitality. The project we will be talking about today is the I&E Construction Headquarters in Wilsonville, Oregon. The newly renovated headquarters of I&E Construction is the product of a design, build, and adaptive reuse project. What was once a nondescript nursing school from the 70s has undergone a significant makeover showcasing modern design and functionality. Woodblock Architects focused on overhauling the building layout by repurposing a neglected courtyard and incorporating NLT, or nail-laminated timber, throughout the interior of the building. Now, let's get into the details. Welcome back to Detailed. My guests today are Dave Hardister, Principal, and Andra Riegler, Project Manager/Architect from Woodblock Architecture here in my hometown of Portland, Oregon. The project we are chatting about today is the I&E Construction Headquarters in Wilsonville, Oregon. Funny story, they happen to do the enclosure in my townhomes. Dave and Andra, welcome to Detailed. Thank you for joining me today. How's it going?
Thanks for having us.
Good. Yes, thank you so much.
Well, I got to visit your office at one point, so now it's nice to have you kind of visit my virtual office. You're visiting my office. I'm excited to talk about this project because I just have a feeling there's some good stories that are going to happen here. We always start with an icebreaker question, just warm us up a little bit. And they're fun. They're fun to ask, see what kinds of answers you come up with. So today for you guys, one of the unique things about living in the Pacific Northwest is the variety of outdoor activities that we have everywhere. I mean, there's just so much to do. At any given time, within an hour and a half to 3 hours, you can be at the beach, on the mountain, in the woods, in the desert. So my question for you today is, what is your favorite outdoor activity in the Pacific Northwest and why?
You want to take it, Dave?
I'll take it. Frankly, it's what drew my wife and I here 30 years ago from Los Angeles, was that it's right at your doorstep. We're 15 minutes away from Forest Park, where you can jump on your bike, go for a hike. It's a great part of our lifestyle. I have to say, for me, I do less now that we've been growing this business over the past 9 years. But for the past 2 years, I participated in a hike for Make-A-Wish Foundation of Oregon. It's a 26.3 mile hike that starts at Silver Falls State Park. And it's just a fantastic event. I hate the training for it, but the day of, to be out there with 50 to 60 people, and you're really doing something great for these kids, and it's a blast, and it's beautiful too. Beautiful park.
It is a beautiful park. I think we might be neighbors or somewhere in the general vicinity. I live in Forest Heights.
Forest Heights. I live in Portland, Southeast Portland. Yeah.
Oh, okay. No, we're not neighbors.
No.
Dave's on the other side of the river.
Yeah.
I don't know when you're
northwest, though.
I don't know what time of day.
I am.
15 minutes to Forest Park from Southeast.
He has a Fiat. He really drives fast.
I was going to say. How about you?
I'm exaggerating,
Yeah, it's like, I thought, he must be close by where I am because...
No.
Maybe
15 minutes from downtown. That's more reasonable.
At 3 a.m.
Yes.
Yeah, no traffic.
How about you, Andra?
So I'm a golfer. I grew up in Florida, and that's kind of a lifestyle there. But the weather is definitely different. So the summers, you're more inside. So that's been really interesting to have kind of like this flip of the seasons, or even having seasons out here. But just the various terrain, like you said, is so cool that you can drive to the high desert, you can get to the mountain. There's probably somewhere in Oregon that has sunshine, even when Portland a lot of the time doesn't. So it really kind of opens up the golf season, which is cool, and also gets me outside because I'm a little bit more of an indoor cat anyways. So I moved out here trying to become a little more outdoorsy.
Well, keep working. You'll get there.
Hey, yeah.
You have 30 years and then you're officially an Oregonian. So, Dave,
I'm only at 5, so it's low.
I think I'm a year away, maybe. My kids were born here, so they're anchor babies, right? Isn't that how it works?
Exactly. Okay. All right. We'll keep you. I was born here, so I remember about 30 years ago when a bunch of Oregonians were running around with bumper stickers on their cars that said "Californians go home." Do you remember that?
I do indeed. We came from Venice Beach, and we got our cars registered very rapidly to
so they don't get keyed or something.
Exactly.
Just to qualify, I never had that bumper sticker.
Good.
I didn't have a problem with Californians coming to hang out with us. Let's talk about this project. And I'm just going to go off the rails on the very first question. So one of the things that I couldn't wait to talk about when I was reading through the project description, doing a little trolling online, was the decision to go with the design build project delivery method, especially when the owner is a contractor, because all kinds of wild things went through my head when I read that. So
and the occupant.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's start there. Why was that method chosen, and what exactly did that dynamic look like in this particular case?
There's quite a backstory to this project. It started as a 30,000 square foot ground up office for this rapidly growing contractor / developer. He had a site that he was looking at the Aurora airport, and it was going to require a rezone. So we got all the way through schematic design on that, and he was under an extreme time crunch. He was selling his office that he was currently in, and he had to be out by April of 2020. So we were working on this in March of 2019, just about ready to roll into design development. Well, CDs really. And I came into our Monday morning design meeting at his office, and he said, "We're changing gears." What? I bought a building over the weekend in Wilsonville. It's right on I-5. That's our new project. We're going to convert it into the offices. So I was dumbfounded. And the schedule wasn't changing. This was in probably early April of 2019. I thought he was joking. He was not joking. And we had to hit the ground running. So that kind of forced our hand to, this was, the only method to get this done was design build.
I think I'd have a heart attack.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Dave did, yeah.
I did. And I may have cursed at him a little bit, it was fine because that's the kind of relationship that I had built with Carl Ivanoff, the owner of I&E.
When's the last time you said, "Oh, I bought a building over the weekend"?
Never.
No, me neither.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about this building then. This is an adaptive reuse project, obviously. So tell me, what was it you had to work with? Give me a little background on the building itself.
Andrew, why don't you take this one?
Okay. Yeah, this building was an interesting gem. It was currently functioning as a nursing school. But prior to that, when it was originally built, it was a printing office or company. So there was a lot of storage and equipment. And so a variety of different floor assemblies and room types and grade changes and just kind of some oddities that the nursing school had kind of put Band-Aids on to get to function for their needs. And so a lot of the circulation was enclosed. There was clearly a need for separation of spaces just for health and safety and that kind of thing. So we noticed that opening those spaces up was going to be pretty critical. And then the building itself is kind of a bow tie shape, if you've ever looked at it in an aerial view. So the second floor had this really harsh angle kind of running from one stair all the way back to the other one. So we knew there was some square footage that we could probably get from modifying that. But then the more walls, especially exterior walls that we were touching, the more complicated the structure was going to get. So there was a lot of uncovering things and finding out that we had to make quick kind of decisions or changes under construction. So I think that's where this method of having the owner and contractor be the same unit really was helpful, because instead of having to explain all this to the owner, they're kind of knowing what's going on in the moment and they're invested and they're making the decisions with you. And they also have the construction knowledge to help in those decisions. So we had a really good structural team with us to work on this, so that they were constantly kind of having to pivot and adjust to the owners mostly and our design ideas and removing load-bearing conditions. And they were just having to kind of deal with it.
Dancing around existing interior shear walls. And essentially we took the program from the 30,000 square foot ground up project and forced it into this odd shaped building. I think we landed at 26,000 square feet when we were done. So they lost some storage space, really, but the program was able to fit into this odd geometry that it was challenging for sure.
My favorite types of projects. What was the design vision for this building, and how much were you going to have to adapt, especially since you designed it for something else, adapt this building to meet your vision? Because it almost sounds like you needed a complete gutting.
It did require a complete gutting. We left the elevator and the 2 ground floor restrooms. That was it. The owner wanted to keep the vision of the ground up building that had 2 wings and then this 2-story volume atrium lobby space. He wanted to replicate that in this new building, this new old building. So the first time I walked it, I was like, man, I don't know what to do here. But I did, there was this courtyard, the entry courtyard, that was just sad, dark. Plants were all not maintained.
Pretty neglected,
It didn't lend anything to the building at all. It looked like lost square footage to me.
There were also some kind of maybe cross bracing or details on the second floor that really blocked a lot of light from coming in through the courtyard anyway. So the kind of reception area was still really dark, even though you had this courtyard, and the wall to the main stair was solid with no windows. So there wasn't really any use of that interior to kind of open things up. It seemed to almost be making those conditions worse. So luckily it feels like our client was able to kind of visualize that the atrium model would work there. And then we had to kind of work through how to actually get it to work.
So for your design vision, so besides turning this courtyard into an atrium, what were you designing inside the building? What kind of spaces were you what kind of program were you having to put together in there?
He wanted a grand entry. That was kind of his driving design decision. He wanted people to walk into his building and just say, wow, this is amazing, and use it as a showcase for their construction work and also their ability. They have great vision, great design vision. And that's pretty rare when you work with a client where you almost don't have to do much. You just sort of follow their lead. And when we were working on the first building, I wanted to use CLT for this grand entry volume as the structure ceiling. And that got shut down because of cost. And we brought DCI in to do the engineering, and we were at a meeting. He said, why don't we just use NLT? It's so much easier, and it looks good. It goes up quickly. It's pretty easy to fabricate. So the owner was all in. In fact, he set up his own fabrication shop to build the panels. He took, having never done it before, took it on himself and just went for it. So that wood material drove the interior design. The interior designer just followed suit. We have these wood slat ceiling clouds in the open offices. The wall behind the reception desk, it's the wood slats vertically. They carved their logo into those wood slats. It's just, it made it easy to this one material, and then we just ran with it.
Tell our listeners what NLT means.
Nail-laminated timber. And you see it in old warehouses. It's 150-year-old technology. And here we use 2x4s, and you stand them on end and nail them together in a staggered nailing pattern. And you create, with the panels that we use, I believe they were 4x16. Super easy to lay down as a structure. There was one guy operating a crane and two guys on the roof setting the panels, and it went really fast. The structure holding up those panels, I believe they were 5 3/4 by 22-inch glue lambs that were 8 feet on center. So it's a really beautiful structure, I think.
That's a unique way to solve that, to solve that need of, wanting CLT. If it's too expensive, how can we get?
Yeah, CLT has it's a much cleaner look. The NLT is a little bit rough, but when it's 30 feet up, you're not going to see those imperfections. It's a beautiful system.
So what about the site? Was there anything unique or challenging on the site? Obviously, you're basically bringing in a construction company. It was a nursing school. Did you have to do anything with the site to accommodate what the new use was going to be?
We tried to leave a lot of the parking, but they definitely wanted as much parking or storage for, construction equipment as possible. And that was maybe the little bit of program that didn't quite fit in this particular building. And so they have to kind of have a storage building separate, which the original goal was to have everything. But the site reads like it's really flat. And then when we got there and walked around to the back on the I-5 side, one of the stairs from the 2 stair towers didn't come all the way down to the ground. There was like a 3-foot just jump at the end, which these were going to be our egress stairs. So it was important for them to get to the ground and figure out how some of that hardscape was going to work. And there were some pretty large mature trees back there that were causing a little bit of chaos in the foundation. So it's really tight onto the highway. So we really had kind of a limited space to really move in there to get anything to work. And we were trying to keep the footprint outside of the courtyard to atrium change as much in the existing perimeter as possible. So that one stair ended up kind of coming out through the exterior as well, just because there wasn't any space to lose in the footprint to add more stairs. So it really had to kind of come out of the site.
Well, and as I recall, at the east side of the building where the entry is, we were very tight making the accessibility work with the existing sidewalk and then the existing parking. There was some gymnastics that had to happen.
Did you have to do anything with the trees that were causing problems?
The client did have an arborist come and deem some of them not healthy, but it is very hard to have that process go your way, especially in Wilsonville. They're pretty adamant that mature trees are left alone. So that was kind of an added layer to our land use process, which was already, as Dave was saying, a very tight schedule. So adding anything like that kind of involves a lot of approvals was necessary, but challenging.
That's why I asked that question. Us Oregonians know you don't cut down a tree around here very easily.
Yeah.
Sometimes even when you need to. When we had our ice storm, there was a person that lives in, I'm up in Forest Heights, and my backyard is literally the forest.
Mm-hmm.
I stand on my deck and I see the forest and everything. And there was a family close by to me that had applied to have an unhealthy tree, big, tall, old growth stuff all around here, cut down, and the city denied it. And the tree ended up falling on their house during the ice storm. So, yeah, there's some conflict going on there now, obviously. But you can't cut down trees easily, even when they're causing problems. I was just curious if you had some.
Well, we did have to put back the same amount of trees that we took away. So that there was that sort of compromise that the city was willing to make. Andrew was talking about the design review process, land use, and it was a tough one. It was a really tough one. And it, being design build, we hadn't designed everything at all. Right. But we had these, and they were interested in the exterior. So we presented this exterior that ended up not really looking quite the way as we submitted it. It's primarily the colors. And the owner decided that he was going to paint this entire building black, all black, everything. Well, he did this during construction, and somebody from the city drove by, and they were like, no way. They just said
an anonymous tip.
Yeah, an anonymous tip. It was so imposing. They referred to it as Darth Vader. And so we had to go back in front of the design commission to try to sell this to them. I think I went in front of them twice. It was not easy. We got it through, but we had to compromise and add some wood siding to the exterior of the building at the corners and some wood trellises at the entry side. And the owner was adamant. He was not going to back down. It's his brand. Black, white. That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I will tell you, I think it's stunning. I love the all black.
Yeah.
So next time somebody at the city wants to complain, you can tell them, hey, people like it. It is. I think I saw you sent me a bunch of pictures, and looking at the pictures, I don't know if they were early renderings. I forgot to open them up before we started talking. But something that wasn't all black. And it's like, it's almost a completely different building, even though it's the same building, just by painting it black.
Yeah, and I think by painting it black, it really highlights the fenestration, especially on that entry side. The unique sort of
mosaic
of changing window sizes. It really makes that stand out. And then it's really stunning at night. It's lit up.
Well, I love it. Just
so
thank
you.
Next time one of the I&E guys are here fixing something, I'll say, hey, I love it. Go tell your boss. Before we go inside the building, tell me about the building exterior design. What are some of the materials and systems you use? Pull all that together. Paint me a picture.
Go for it.
Verbally. It's all yours, Andra.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have. Material-wise, like Dave was saying, the branding was really important to this particular client. So they're also primarily envelope modification, remodel type contractors too. So they're pretty invested in how the envelope was going to work and how it was going to look and what maybe this process would be when we were going to paint everything the same color to kind of understand the different textural changes of the different materials. So some city requirements were at work, of course, on, they don't want a fully fiber cement building, which most jurisdictions don't anymore. So there was going to be metal panel and some type of wood tone, possibly, actual timber, but possibly some kind of timber-like product. We know where we live, so we know it's hard to maintain some certain materials. And with this client going to be the operator, they definitely, as much as they have experience to do it, they wanted to make sure the product was going to end up good and successful and sturdy and have a long lifespan. So knowing that we had a little bit of exterior that we were trying to keep, we had these really large window openings almost everywhere, these kind of picture windows, very consistent. Definitely reads like it was classrooms or something like that. So they wanted to keep a lot of that just so they weren't modifying too much of the exterior structure itself, but they replaced a lot of the windows to help with sound and kind of passive solar to make sure that the spaces aren't just getting completely destroyed by temperatures and thermal transitions and that kind of thing. So we spent a lot of time on the back on the I-5 side just to ensure that those spaces were still going to be usable and it wasn't going to be miserable to be 20 feet off of the freeway. And so knowing that we were kind of pulling this courtyard into this atrium space, there was going to be a lot on the interior that was really detailed that we wanted to have almost like a backdrop to that or some kind of canvas from the inside that would really kind of hold that height, that grandness that the client really wanted, and give us a space to do something interesting. So that's where the storefront tile kind of idea took life and took shape. We designed it with a ton of different iterations and a bunch of different size windows. And I remember the client basically saying, you can pick 3 and we'll just try to repeat that, but we don't need to go too crazy. But I think the design and the idea is still very much there. And we wanted to really have kind of a sturdy material on the exterior so that we could have these kind of lights and shadows. So they have a lot of sconce lighting that goes up and down. So there's highlighting of all kinds of, intricacies of the building, all the shadow lines, all the metal panel connections. So I found that some materials that you would maybe think are obvious or simple or straightforward, having this contractor be so invested in this project, they really wanted to show off. So a lot of the intersections and the little kind of smaller details are really well done. So that really adds kind of another layer to the exterior.
Yeah, I love the way those up-down lights light the underside of the NLTs. It spans to the exterior. There's not a lot of it, but it's just this really sort of delicate touch that pulls into the interior. It's pretty cool.
I have to ask because I couldn't completely tell for sure from the pictures. Is that some kind of outdoor amenity space or terrace?
Yes.
That I see in that one section of the roof?
Yeah, that was at rooftop originally, and the owner's office ties into that, and there's some common spaces as well, a break room, I think, and then a little admin office. Yeah, and that proved to be really challenging as well.
That was the area where the roof was much larger, so we were capturing a lot of that space back and then occupying it. So obviously that proves to be challenging in terms of a larger assembly space. How do you get people out of it? How many exits are you going to need? How are we going to get the structure to be able to support people and not just maintenance and equipment? So that one really was probably the hardest to resolve.
A pedestal paver system on top of all that. And the structure we had to drop the structure because we couldn't get the paver system to work with what was there. I actually think the roof was slightly higher. That I can't remember.
I think the roof had been replaced maybe over the lifetime of the building, and so the access point was not flush with the roof anymore. And so we were hoping that once we removed a lot of what was there, the membrane layer, the insulation, we would be able to either build it back up differently or kind of sister onto the existing structure and get it to work. But it ended up that the math just was not mathing. So we had to completely redo the structure there.
I was looking at some earlier design drawings and some sketches, and we actually had some interior ramps that were going to ramp up to that patio.
And then again, we already were under on the square footage they wanted for their program, so there was really nowhere to lose efficiency.
So we dropped the structure. We were able to reuse some of the existing joists, but we ended up going to 12 inches on center, I believe, to deal with the heavier loads in the paver system. And those are the kind of things that we had to deal with through the process on the fly. A lot of gear shifting.
Yeah, you don't know what you're going to uncover until you kind of do that. So there was some selective demo when we were surveying, but mostly a lot of this was when the building was down to the bones. So we had to just kind of work with what we had. And of course, that reduced the head height and the spaces below, which were supposed to be more the field teams area where they wanted some roll-up doors, some taller things, be able to use that for storage. So there were times where a certain program had to kind of move around because the space was no longer what we expected.
I would imagine, just based on the makeup of this team and the owner also being a contractor and the contractor building their own building, that decisions could happen pretty fast. Don't have your usual send an RFI, owner's got to, all that stuff that when you had to pivot or you came across something that you didn't expect to find and you had to figure it out. I would think that you probably did that more efficiently than a traditional project, maybe.
Yeah, and I went into our construction administration folder, and there's not a lot of RFIs in there, to be honest.
Probably not a lot of submittals either.
No, there were a lot of phone calls and a lot of site visits, and it worked because there was trust. We decided we didn't have to build a huge paper trail on this because we knew that we were collaborating and we were on this team, and we had this crazy deadline that we had to meet. So it was run and gun for sure.
And I'm going off track a little bit, but it's in my head and I'm worried I'm going to forget to ask you when we get to that point. But I would also imagine that because it's a contractor, and a well-established contractor in this area, building their own building, that there was a little bit of relaxing on your part in worrying about whether they're doing things well. Because it's their own building. They're not just a contractor building. They're building their own building.
Exactly.
Yeah. I would imagine there's a little extra investment there.
Yeah, and I also have to say that it's initially a little bit difficult to let go of those reins and just let the team do what they're going to do. Because as architects, sometimes we look at our projects as being ours and precious, and you really have to give that up. I kind of like that because the product becomes something you may not have imagined.
Uh-huh.
It's funny. I interviewed another architect here in Portland, as a matter of fact, Andra Riegler, on the Harder Mechanical Headquarters. where Harder Mechanical also acted as their own GC in an old building that they were completely redoing. And I'm starting to see a little common theme between some of the, because some of the questions are similar that I'm asking about having to let go a little bit and because who builds it? Contractors build it.
Mm-hmm.
We may design it on our side of the fence, but they know how to make it come together. And I think that this process lends to a little bit more eye-opening on both sides, both for the contractors and the architects, that there might be better ways we can do things if we don't maybe stay in our little bubbles quite as much as we normally do.
I would agree that the roles were not adversarial as they can be, as we all know.
Right.
It was a true collaboration. We never knew what the budget was. We were never told the budget. So at times we were like, God, is he going to buy into this? This is crazy. Yeah, I was skeptical about the patchwork windows on the entry. And what I handed off to the team was nothing like that. It was, 2 stories of standard storefront or curtain wall, big rectangle. And these guys took it over it and said, God, this is boring. So they just went for it.
I think that kind of brings up a good point on how this particular model, since the schedule was so tight, we really had to bring in a lot of our office to work on this. So there was a range of experience levels and designers, and sometimes that fresh eye can really, it was one of our summer interns at the time, actually, that kind of worked through that idea. So, you see kind of the difference between years of experience and understanding how you can collaborate to work on those things and still kind of come up with something interesting that maybe we wouldn't have thought we would get away with.
I love that you just said that, because everybody says, oh, these young people don't know anything and they're lazy. And I don't buy into any of that.
Not at all.
No, they're a lot more working with them. Yeah. They're a lot more aggressive usually on their designs, because I think we've all been like hurt and we've been told that our idea is so insane and so expensive.
Yeah. It made me feel very old and conservative when I started seeing what was coming out of this guy. It was great.
Was it nerve-wracking to could you relax more not knowing the budget, or was it kind of nerve-wracking?
A little bit of both. We never just really knew where we stood. Are we going overboard? When is he going to put the guardrails on?
Uh-huh.
And he never really did.
Like, to an extent, you don't ever know how well you're doing, but we had so much communication with them where we were having weekly design meetings and weekly OACs separate. So they were very much pitching ideas in those design meetings and wanted to look at our Revit model and look at light angles and everything. So they were really engaged on the design part. So to an extent, it was scary to come in that room with an idea and have them kind of like give you a blank stare, but they really didn't do that.
That seems, it would feel to me that working on a project like that would have been kind of refreshing, in having some of those typical barriers that we self-impose and being able to just really kind of dig in and, hey, what do you think? Can you afford it? Let's do it.
Yeah.
I love that. Let's talk about, since I went right down a rabbit hole there, let's go inside the building and talk about some of the specific spaces inside the building. Let's start with, you've already touched on it, but I want to get down and dirty on this courtyard turned atrium, because it really is stunning, and it was a game changer for that building. It's so open and light. Tell me, you talked about it a little bit already of what you started with. Tell me about what you started with and what it turned into, and how hard was that to make happen?
Well, everything under that new roof runs east to west. We popped up and then continued the NLT to the west. And those are common spaces on both floors. Behind the lobby reception area is their fitness center, and it's nicer than I think any gym I've ever been in. And initially, he wanted that wall to be primarily glass, so you could see into the fitness center. And someone was like, "Yeah, you don't want to do that." He wanted to show off that he encouraged his staff to work out.
Right.
So he nixed that idea, which I think was a good decision. But on the second floor, there is the main conference room. So the NLT runs through that as the ceiling. And then there's this rather large break room, lounge, kitchen area where the NLT runs through as well. And so that just kind of, that drove those common spaces, the NLT. And it was a lot of it was just trying to get a lot of daylight into these spaces that didn't have it before. And on the west side, where the gym and the lounge are, it's west facing, so we really wanted to try to filter the light. So we did that perf panel logo that's 30 feet tall by 40 feet wide, and the perforations create the logo. Well, the light and shadow play on the interior it's amazing. It's just beautiful. And I don't know that we even have any photos on our website, but I was going through photos recently, and I was like, that is so cool that it did what we wanted it to do. It provided some shade, and then the play of light and shadow kind of became the theme of those common spaces, the lobby and the gym and the lounge.
Yeah, he did call not putting in the glass in the gym.
Yeah, that's.
I would immediately not use it
if I was there,
because someone could see you working.
Yeah,
exactly.
With the reception desk right on the outside.
Yeah. Your clients come in and you're on the treadmill sweating, and
the customer's always right?
Yeah.
I don't know who talked him out of that, but good for that person.
I'm sure.
I think when we first saw the building itself and we saw the courtyard, obviously that was just going to be the atrium. But since this building's first floor and second floor footprints are so different, there was a lot of misalignment happening, and there wasn't any real benefit to just staying within that square footage, and it was fairly small. So once we started kind of chipping away further into the building, I think that's where the client got more excited, because all of a sudden all these walls were coming down, and that area was getting a lot larger, and there was more opportunity for, different fenestration or different finish materials. And kind of brings us to the main stair, where that original stair was constructed utilizing the exterior wall on the one side of the courtyard for its structural support. And once that wall came down, then that stair, which was supposed to stay exactly how it was with the rubber treads and everything, had to completely change. So that's where Dave got, his really great idea to do the mono stringer.
I don't know if that was my idea. That might
well,
have
you
been
just
Ryan's.
take it. Just take it.
Okay, I'll take it. I did work on
the lights came back on good.
I worked on the detailing during construction, because I looked at our permit set this morning. Boy, was it thin. It was pretty thin. And that stair, it was
just looks like a stair.
It just looks like a generic stair.
Yeah, like a prefab
steel pan with concrete. And that wasn't gonna. There was no way Carl was gonna have some generic stair there. So yeah,
when it looks great.
Yeah, it came out great.
So I imagine there was some complicated detailing.
Yeah,
you're dropping roofs to get an outdoor amenity space. You're putting in an atrium in a spot where it used to be an outdoor courtyard. I've been to your office. You've got fairly young staff.
Yeah.
There. Lots of lessons learned on this one?
Well, I think the beauty of it is we have I&E is a bit of they're envelope experts.
Yeah.
So we didn't really have to get too concerned about flashing and terminations and intersections of roof to new outdoor terrace. But I looked at everything. I don't think we detailed a lot of that, and they told us not to. They didn't want us to waste our time, because we probably would have been wrong, is my guess.
How often do you get an opportunity to do that?
Right.
Never.
I guess they can't come back at us if there's no detail at all. But usually there would be something.
Yes, there would be something. We did detail all the windows properly. We did at least show that, but I don't think we did a whole lot for that terrace or where the new roof met the old roof.
Mostly just in terms of the insulation. I think since this was an existing building, but it was a new roof, we were still going to have to bring it up to code. So in order to get the pedestal to work, the structure, and the tapered insulation, that's where kind of the accuracy really was important in using our BIM software, just to make sure that we actually were accommodating for those things so that the transitions would work, accessibility. I mean, there's a lot of things at work on a rooftop terrace. So that took a lot of detail.
I recall they just said, hey, give us this much room so we can properly flash. And I was out there when they were doing it, and looks fine to me. They absolutely know what they were doing. Yeah. I was skeptical. I thought, man, with as few details as we had, I was a little nervous that we might have some leaks.
Just like how our staff is fairly young, like you say, which thank you, that is so kind. They had some fairly junior staff as well. Yeah. So the superintendent this was his first project with this company and was probably younger than I am. So at times we were all sweating a little, like you could see it in his face that he was kind of terrified because, usually your CEO is not watching you like this particular construction was. I mean, he definitely had a lot of eyes on him and a lot of pressure, but now that we've worked with him again, he's still there. He's an amazing superintendent. And so the PM group, the PEs, the supers, basically everyone from their team was kind of involved on this too. So I think it was a learning opportunity for everybody.
What a project to cut your teeth on. That's the best first project he could have had.
Oh, he was a stress case.
Yeah.
I feel bad for him. He had so much pressure on him.
Expectations were high for everyone. I mean, this client is very invested in his work, and he wanted this to turn out amazing, and he had his timeline, and he probably had his budget that we didn't know about. So there were definitely expectations that we were all trying to meet.
Well, and you can't blame him. I mean, this is his statement. He's a contractor,
right?
Yeah, it's
a building,
some office. He's showcasing this is what I do. It's not just look at my cool offices. This is what I do. It had to be.
Yeah, it had to be. Could you imagine
walking into a building a contractor built for themselves and looking around and going, "This is crap."
This sucks.
Yeah. That's not going to. It's like seeing a hairdresser with really bad hair,
right?
Something's wrong.
Yes.
Okay, so lots of wood and lots of glass going on in the interior of this building. And that monostringer stair is really cool. Tell me about some of your main material choices inside the building. What was the look and vibe? What materials did you choose, and what was the look and vibe you were trying to achieve?
So this client's brand, as we talked about, is black and white. A lot of his other projects are in the development space are that same color scheme. So we kind of knew that bright, vibrant colors were not going to be desirable. And so I think we kind of started to think about how black and white are, kind of a solid and a void, like a positive, negative contrast. So I think that's where we wanted kind of the heaviness of exposing a lot of the structure, but then have a lot of glass railing, a lot of glass storefront, just a lot of transparency between the spaces and light coming through so that there would just always be some kind of shadow or a contrast or something that was happening to really showcase that is their brand. So a lot of walls without any type of glazing or particular finish material are all just painted white. That's kind of exactly what they want, is a clean looking space. And compared to what it was before, it is a shocking difference in the remodel.
I like clean lines, so I think that's why I like this one so much.
And I don't think we punched a bunch of skylights into the new NLT. And I remember that being a kind of a difficult move, just because of the way the panels lay out and the way the structure lays out. We really had to be careful about where they landed.
I think our structural engineer gave us like zones.
He
was
did.
Like, this is it. We're like, okay, so that's exactly where the skylights are.
Yeah. And I think in the initial designs, we had varying sizes, really narrow and long, and they all ended up being 2 feet by 4 feet, I think is what happened. But we created this random pattern that I think is pretty cool.
How much counseling did your structural engineer have to get after this project?
Honestly, probably a lot. We haven't heard from them actually since. So I hope he's doing okay.
I asked him for a fee on a new project. So he
is
good. Alive.
Good.
I have to say, he was great. He was up for it. He was up for the challenge. And the thing I like about DCI is they really get involved in the design. They come up with solutions that enhance the design rather than just, okay, we're going to do our standard framing here and we're done. They really look at it holistically, how things connect and how the structure can be exposed to be part of the architecture.
And they had to be on site a lot and available a lot. Structurally, I think that was the most complicated kind of on the fly decisions that were having to be made, more so than waterproofing or anything else. So they were very much there probably once a week.
Yeah, I think they were there more than we were.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, projects like this, as gray hair inducing as they can be, in my opinion, are the most fun. You don't maybe think that in the moment sometimes, but it's different. You get to do new things. You get to solve new problems. You're not doing this, the same square box building over and over again.
I kind of thrive on this model. I was a part owner of a design build company before we started Woodblock. That's where I cut my teeth, and it was different. It was very different, and I learned that I liked being part of the decision-making process while the building's going up, and not just creating this set of drawings where my expectations probably wouldn't be met anyway, because especially in these rehab projects, there's just so much that you don't know about that you cannot anticipate. So I love that about it, is being out in the field and drawing on the drywall or drawing on the frame. How are we going to make this work? That's, to me, that's the challenge and fun of what we do.
I'm straying off the script so much today. I love doing that, though.
Well, I'm probably not helping.
No.
Yeah,
we just keep
chatty.
saying really interesting things, though. So I'm curious, do you see your firm actively searching out projects like this? Or do you think if they come to you, you'll be game?
For me, it depends on who the contractor is and who the client is. You can't be on different pages or get into that finger pointing game that often happens. You have to be a truly collaborative team and be ready for any curveball that's thrown at you. and that's kind of a special thing. I don't know that a lot of clients and contractors are built that way. I mean, I at one point I thought maybe this is all I would do would be design build, but it's intense. And I think if it were every project that I was working on, I'd be a lot more stressed out.
Good to know.
Yeah. I mean, I'm already a ball of stress to begin with, so it would only be worse.
I think that's why we get along so well. It's just kind of in the DNA.
Yeah. I don't know if my wife enjoys it. Well, I know she does, and she's
comes with the territory, I think.
Yeah.
30 years of my stress and intensity, it's a bit much.
Yeah. Well, she clearly loves you very much.
Yeah.
We should have had Sal on here.
We should have. Yeah, well.
Featuring.
Yeah. Let her give her opinion of
She's probably like, I hate this project.
Architecture. Yeah. Yeah.
It ruined everyone's life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the most difficult thing to detail or design on this project? And what did you learn from it?
For me, it was that stair because it was completely on the fly and we didn't know what it was going to look like. And we really kind of struggled to make the connections look clean. And I just remember like trying to get these plates to not look stupid, holding the stair treads and connecting to the monostringer. We went back and forth with Adam at DCI how to make it work. And I think everybody was pretty satisfied.
How about you, Andra?
I was not as involved in that stair detail in particular, but there were several other things that were similar to that where it was kind of this constant juggling of this existing condition that didn't meet code, trying to get it to work and still look cool, and then try to get it structurally to be stable. So usually we would kind of be like, not my department. I don't know how the screws work and what organization of everything and the plate sizes. But in this situation, we cared a lot about how it was going to look. And so you don't just want like a handrail extension jutting out into a random way where you don't have the space to work around it. So there's a lot of those considerations where corridors were tight and spaces had low ceilings, and it was just hard to get as much of the existing systems and existing structure to work, and then also to keep in mind kind of the climate here and try to make the building function well, because we know who is going to be the end user, so we're probably going to get phone calls all the time if it's horrible in there. And so there was a lot of money obviously going into this, and we wanted to make sure it showed that, the stuff that the customers were seeing right when you walk in was compelling and beautiful and represented our region with all of the timber. And these kind of details became really important where they would maybe have been kind of a really small piece of a new construction project.
Well, and when we started construction, the interior design was not completed by any means. So we didn't exactly know how that fireplace was going to finish out. There were a lot of unknowns. There were so many unknowns. But I think having the collaborative spirit helped us create this kind of magical building that looked like a pile of garbage when we started.
To whoever designed that building, it was not garbage.
Oh, sorry about that.
It was definitely used.
Yeah, it was used. It functioned.
Had T111 everywhere, which everyone loves that.
Painted all gray.
Painted gray, not even like a nice gray, like a really faded kind of blue gray.
It was sad.
It was sad. Yeah, it needed a facelift, and that was what we thought we were doing, but it became really a full gut. I mean, we have pictures of the site where it almost looked like the building had burned down. There was like very little left of it.
It's true. Yeah.
It sounds like it needed it.
It needed it.
Yeah.
So the rest of the building, the lounge, I'm assuming that's like an employee kind of lunchroom kind of space, and a gym. Is the rest offices mainly and conference rooms? Anything else special?
There's a training room on the first floor, right when you kind of behind where you walk in the lobby. So that has not tiered seating, but rows of tables, I think mostly for their training, where that's their field team wing. And most of the open office areas have at least some sort of coffee bar or access to one of the break rooms, or a couple of smaller conference rooms, and then a lot of perimeter offices in kind of a pit sort of in the middle of cubicles. And what was interesting with this floor plan was that there's a lot of kind of transition spaces where these little coffee bars kind of ended up coming in, and the locker rooms on the gym, and a couple other kind of staging areas for some of the larger conference rooms, the kind of thing that maybe wouldn't be a priority if you were starting from scratch. But in this scenario, when you get to kind of see a floor plan and try to manipulate it, some of those things became really obvious to add, some back of house opportunities. So they could really have this front of house where the big conference room is and the reception area is, and then have a lot of their usable space kind of hidden behind. So I think that was pretty successful.
Yeah, I think those little coffee bars that are tucked in next to conference rooms, they work really well. So you don't have to walk to go get a client water or a coffee. They're right there. And I think a lot of that grew out of being kind of pinned in by shear walls.
Mm-hmm.
We had to create different spaces we may not have if we would have had a blank slate.
Interesting. I keep trying to requisition a coffee stand at home, basically an IV.
Get a gurney.
Just run my coffee right into the bloodstream.
Yep.
What's your favorite space in this building? Both of you.
I really like the break room because of what Dave was talking about before with the perforated panel. That's the west side, I think, of the building. So in the afternoons, obviously a lot of lights coming in, and those shadows are really interesting, and no one really cares about looking out onto the highway anyway. So it blocks a lot of that. And the way the interior designer finished out that space is really beautiful. And you have two wings of offices that feed right into it. So it definitely feels like it's kind of like a hub. There's always somebody in there when we're there. So I think it's really utilized a lot, which is always great to see.
It almost feels like a small restaurant.
Kind of, yeah.
There's varied seating areas. It's a really nice amenity. And then there's a kind of a huge chef's table that you can eat lunch at.
I'm going to have to go out there and pretend like we have a problem with our enclosure here at my townhomes.
We could probably
they did the work, just so I could say, can we go please talk in the break room? Because I would love to see how that light play works with that perforated panel.
It's pretty amazing.
It feels like that could be a very calming.
I think it is. And the perforations vary in size because that's how we created the logo, was by making tighter and smaller perforations. So it's not just a repetitive pattern that casts itself onto the walls and floor. It's varied. It almost feels like a tree canopy in a way.
That's kind of the vibe that I was kind of picturing in my head.
Yeah.
It was like how it would feel sitting under a tree and that play on light. I need to go. Yeah, I'm going to go out there and say, I have a problem. Dave told me to come out here.
Just be like, can I grab a coffee? And then go upstairs.
Yeah.
I'm sure we could get you a tour.
Yeah, we could, especially with this podcast.
They love to show off their building.
They do.
I can imagine. It sounds pretty cool. What's your favorite space, Dave? Same one or something different?
I think it's that break room kitchen area. It's very relaxing. Yeah, especially when the light is being cast into it from the perforated panels.
Yeah, I have to see. I'm going to have to figure it out.
And the finish, Carl's wife was very involved in selecting the finishes, and I think they're spot on.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
You ever seen a married couple trying to buy a house or redecorate their house?
I think Carl just kind of said, Val, run with this.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Whatever you want.
Yeah. So she collaborated pretty heavily with the interior designer, Brooke Bauer. And I think all the lighting is fantastic. I don't think we could have done better.
Very talented.
Well, I'm going to skip the next two questions because in all our ramblings, we've actually already talked about it.
Go ahead.
Let's talk about construction. So one of the things I heard you say earlier, I'm revising this question a little bit. One of the things I heard you say earlier is, we'd open this up and find something we didn't expect to find. I mean, we all know renovation projects or adaptive reuse projects. You just have to be prepared for that. You can't know everything with an existing building. What kind of challenges or unexpected conditions did you encounter throughout construction that caused you to have to pivot or change your design or, whatever that you didn't expect to find?
Almost everything. I mean, we didn't really have any as-built, so we surveyed as well as we could, but there were some hidden gems and some unknowns, especially in terms of how the shear was working in the building. So selective demo was not good enough, and we ended up finding a lot of things as, assumptions that were made were not going to work. So it kind of covered the board on what types of issues those were. But of course, when you go into a remodel, you're looking at systems and certain things that you want to try to keep, or like seeing how old everything is, or what are the door, like I think they repurposed some doors and reused them, or door frames, like little things where you can get some cost savings are kind of the first pass. And then from there, we're like, great, well, we'll start working through the design and assume this isn't a load-bearing condition or, whatever it is. And so you can see on a lot of our drawings, there's posts and random grade changes, or like some of the slab just kind of ended at one point and things were just kind of patched to work. And so now that, this is going to be there forever, headquarters, ideally, some of those things that probably weren't on anyone's radar are now. And so maybe that really beautiful thing you wanted to do is like moving further to the bottom of the wish list. So I think that part can always be challenging because you want your client to get everything they want, but then everyone knows there's unknowns in a remodel, especially of a building of this age.
I recall the HVAC ducting and distribution being quite a challenge because the second floor ceiling is not, the structure is not that high. So I think there was I don't know how much we were involved in it, but I remember we were trying to find spaces for shafts and none of it was pinned down. I think shafts were bouncing all over the place.
Uh-huh.
So I've been thinking about this all throughout, and I was waiting to get to the construction conversation to ask this question. You said you were designing this in 2019.
Uh-huh.
My sense of time is totally warped after COVID. This project ended up happening during COVID?
Yes, it sure did. I was just looking at our drawings to see when we submitted for permit after we had pretty much gotten over the design review hurdle, which we had to revisit later anyway, because of changing stuff. We submitted for permit on the first week of October in 2019. Building had to be occupiable by mid to late April of 2020. So COVID definitely threw a wrench into everything. And they somehow managed their way through it. People, the subcontractor teams had to stay away from each other. They had to be masked. It was a challenge.
Remember getting your hands on certain materials during COVID was a nightmare. And there were a number of contractors that were out there buying things up and hoarding them in the fear that they wouldn't be able to get them for projects.
Oh yeah, switchgear.
I can't even tell you how many people have like tons of that and just sitting in their reserves because it's over a year to get anything.
HVAC units as well.
I'm assuming that you did not open by that April, or the building wasn't done by that April, or did they make it happen?
Did they get a little bit of an extension?
I can't remember. It might have been
I think their original, like whoever they were selling to of their office, let them stay maybe a little bit longer, but it was pretty much the same schedule.
I think they got about a month extension.
Yeah,
maybe. He sold his previous office building to John Deere. They had it got a little softer, probably because of COVID. They weren't as hard-lined about it, but it was still we didn't have a permit till December, so very short time frame. They did get a demo permit, so they were able to gut it while we were still getting the building permit.
That's fast.
Very fast.
Yeah.
That is, I mean, because this isn't even a cut and dried project.
No.
No.
I thought it was impossible. The day he changed the whole ball game by buying this building, I was like, there's no way we're going to meet this deadline. He just
smiled.
Me, yeah. Said, yes, we will.
He was like, you can do it, Dave.
Yeah, he did say that.
Well, inadvertently, he might have given away that, hey, all you contractors that say that's going to take you longer. Now we know you can do it faster.
That is a good point.
I don't think that was healthy for anyone on his team.
No.
They were working some weekends and some late
weekends and nights. Yeah.
Were there any sustainability efforts on this project?
Sort of indirectly.
Yeah.
I think, the nature of the energy code out here, there's sustainable considerations on almost everything, even a remodel. And as we pulled apart walls, we were actively trying to insulate things and provide weather barriers and types of things that would be, probably not considered in the first pass at these exterior walls. So once we knew all the skin was coming off and
down to the plywood
systems and the roofs were being redone, we were able to really bring a lot of things up to code. But in general, I think, the perforated screen is sort of a passive approach to the intense amount of daylight that would be coming into those spaces on that side and those huge windows, instead of just putting, some blinds on there. But I think some of the materials chosen, there were considerations just on being local. And like you said, in the pandemic, it was definitely hard to source things from further away. So it kind of put a lot of those considerations back into play, where it was really important to use local things because we could get them.
And mass timber is a sustainable product.
Yeah. So I did, and this is another curveball, because this is just I'm going to call it the curveball episode. So the freeway right behind the building, you talked about, redoing the windows to help with the sound. Did you do any other things in the building? I mean, because that's right.
It's
right by the freeway.
It's
any
on
other
the
things,
freeway.
As in the walls or anything to strengthen that the acoustics more, or did the windows kind of do the job with just the regular insulation?
I think they're triple pane, so they are pretty good. But this particular client wanted a lot of sleek materials, so those are obviously not great in terms of acoustic transfer. So I believe there are some treatments outside of the drywall, more decorative, that are helping mitigate some of that. And there's carpet in the main office areas. And then we had kind of a lighting cloud type drop ceiling over some of the offices. So I think having kind of the perimeter of PM offices, I guess, and then the interior ones are probably buffered from that sound even more. I don't know if the PMs are hating it, or maybe they have white noise machines.
I've been in the building, right along that wall, and it's surprisingly not that loud. You can hear the cars going. But it's not distracting at all.
Oh, that's good, because that would drive me nuts.
Yeah.
The gym might be rough because it's just a concrete slab. So
hard surfaces.
I think that area is a little bit harder just because it has a taller ceiling as well. So the echo maybe. But like Dave said, when we're there, we never really notice it. And not even just because we're mentally ignoring it. It actually is pretty nice.
They did put some acoustical wall panels in the kitchen break room lounge area to probably mitigate some of that. But that's a big space as well. And the flooring is
tile, I think.
It's tile, so it's got some hard surfaces.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah.
So every project has lessons that we learn from it. Doesn't matter how well the project goes, you're going to learn something you're going to take to the next project. Then you go add on top of it that it's adaptive reuse. And let's go add insult to injury and let's make it design build. I imagine there were a host of lessons learned from this project. There had to be. For each of you, what would you say your single biggest lesson learned was from this project that you will take to the next project like it, or just to the next project in general? I have aha moments, I don't know, every 10 minutes, but there's always something that you're like, okay, I got all this figured out, so this is how I'm going to do it next time to have it go even more smoothly. What did I&E's headquarters give you?
I think for me, I learned that some of these challenges that we find can really turn into moments of delight in design, stuff we didn't know was going to happen as we're, working on schematic design, and almost blindly put together a design, not knowing what was around the corner. And I think that helps me realize that almost any problem we encounter, there's a solution, and it can be a beautiful solution if we just calm down and work through it with the very qualified people that we're surrounded by. We can make it work.
I like that, because I think we could use a little more of that. Just calm down and just keep an open mind.
Yeah, and so many projects we're all working with our volume up to 11, and I think it really hinders what we can do when we're sort of blinded by that anxiety and stress. If we could just step back a little bit, we can get some pretty great things done.
And sometimes that challenge of having to figure out something different turns out to be far better than what you ever originally anticipated in the first place. How about you, Andra?
I think to Dave's point, the communication piece was a big learning opportunity, because, in a more typical construction model, we are more pillars of how this is going to work. And in this scenario, we were all on the same team. And I think that really forced people to utilize their resources. I mean, we had all these great engineers, and the construction team, super talented and diligent and dedicated. So just having that collaboration to know you don't have to know everything, and you might not come up with all the answers, but you're going to come up with one of the answers, and we're going to move forward, and just kind of accepting some of the losses and just moving on and making the goal just to get the project complete and be proud of it. But in this particular project, we learned a lot about the land use process. We're used to having civil engineers and site work attorneys and people doing this type of stuff in advance of us coming in. So there was a lot of moving the ball forward in terms of working with the city and all these checkpoints that are required. And we had to really kind of struggle through that with basically like a timer on us. So there were definitely some takeaways from that, I think, on how grateful we are for some of these people that are experts in this, and that we now can, collaborate with them a bit better because we understand it better.
I'm really curious. Do you feel like this model, this design build model, and being way more embedded with the contractor than you would normally be in construction, taught you a lot more about construction practices and how a building comes together than what you're typically exposed to? Do you think, for either one of you, that your hands are a little dirtier than usual in this process? You're more...
I'll take this one. I think for the rest of our team that does not have experience in that, it was great to see these things. I mean, we've asked contractors to do mock-ups and kind of walk us through how something comes together, because there's lines on a page for us, right? And a lot of people in the office have never flashed a window or laid a brick, and our office is pretty dedicated to learning that stuff and really getting our hands dirty. We've been doing a lot more of that type of education just so we know what we're drawing and who's involved and the technique that's involved. And so I think seeing this building come all the way down to bones and then go all the way back up, since we were there so often, you really got to be a part of every layer, every pass of subcontractor that came through, every challenge. And like Dave said, just marking stuff in chalk on the floor, on the wall. There's a bunch of versions of the drawing sets everywhere, sketches everywhere. It really felt like you were creating something instead of coming out to a site maybe once or twice at big milestones. We really got to see all the details that maybe we don't realize are as challenging as they are when we draw them.
Yeah, I bet you detail differently after that as well in certain things.
Sequencing has definitely become more obvious, where we don't really think about the methods that they're using. I mean, that's part of their job, but being mindful of that type of thing when you design, I think that gives your firm a good reputation of being understanding of how the building actually goes together. And I think we are very humble in that way, in that we want the product to be successful. We want the contractor to like us, because it's important if they do. So this scenario, with it being the ownership, we really wanted them to like us. So we were really very acutely aware of how things were coming together and what the schedule was like.
That was an intentionally leading question, by the way, and you answered it.
Yeah, way better than I could have, that's for sure.
Well, that's what I was looking
Dave's
for.
Dave's like, I didn't learn anything.
I know. I did. I learned about NLT for sure. I knew nothing about it. I got to see them fly the panels and set them. So that was
I had just moved out here from Atlanta, and there's not a lot of mass timber, or there wasn't at the time there. So it was a pretty interesting jump into what this region has to offer and how this building type was gaining so much traction. It's really interesting to expose a lot of the structure like that. I mean, you're so used to if it's wood, it's covered, it's wrapped, you don't see it. So it was a really beautiful result.
Yeah, we actually got quite a bit of attention for it. I think the DJC interviewed me about the NLT. I don't think anyone was using it very much when we started the project. I didn't know. I knew about the DLT and CLT, but I had never seen the NLT before.
Unless they used to call it something different. I've been writing specs for a long time, and I've never written an NLT spec. I hate to admit this, I had to go look it up. I knew it was some kind of laminated timber,
right?
But
some LT.
What's the N?
Yeah.
I had to look it up. That's why I was going to ask you to tell everybody what that was, because I thought if I had to look that up,
other people would too.
There's
Yeah,
going to be other people who are not familiar with that. But now you're a trendsetter too, then.
We're trending.
So what's the number one piece of advice you'd give to another architect going into a design build situation?
Throw away your preconceived notions about what the end product is going to be. It could be very different than your first lines on paper or even your TD set, or it will change.
I really like that answer. I feel like just to be adaptable, be understanding, that things are going to change and maybe turn out differently than you wanted or entirely different from designed, but it's important to just be a team player. There's no room for an ego kind of in this situation. And also to have a really good contractor. That's important.
I love that because, in my opinion, there's never been room for an ego in architecture.
I would agree.
I feel like we're moving so much further away from that mindset and model than it was when I first started in this business.
Same here.
And we are much more collaborative, much more real, much more authentic about the process and the communication. And so I just love that you said that because we're getting there slowly.
Trying to. We're moving the needle a little.
And for me, the key to successful design build is to have a really good superintendent and project manager as well, but the boots on the ground, that's the key. Someone that's willing to call you when they see something that's not quite right, rather than just forging forward and creating more problems. They just get you on the phone, maybe yell at you a little bit, but then come up with a solution. That's what I love about this, is if you have a superintendent that's looking forward rather than just building, and then, I've built myself into a corner. What do I do now? It's the ability to see ahead and ask the right questions.
Well, I think this project is really testament to the superintendent that you had that's brand new to the company.
Yeah.
And first job he's the super on.
Yeah.
And making all this happen with just the kind of project it is and that kind of pressure. Obviously, this is the boss's home, work home. So I'm impressed with that. So before we get to our closing questions, tell me what's next for Woodblock? What's going on? What do you have on the board, so to speak? Nothing's on a board anymore. Give me the details. I need to know I need to know what I'm calling you about later for another interview. So what are you working on right now?
Go for it, Andra.
All kinds of things. Yeah. We're really jumping, both feet into hospitality. So we've been doing several hotels. We're working a lot with clients that want to adapt prototypes into something more grand and beautiful in a lot of parts of the country that have no real competition. So it's kind of growing a community and offering something to a community that it didn't have before, which I always love that. I am almost through construction on a remodel out in Gresham of a furniture store, and it is turning out stunningly beautiful. So keep an eye out on that.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Dave, what else do we have going on?
We have the food hall at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel downtown that is slowly progressing. I don't know when it's going to open. Hopefully sometime this summer. I was just over on site last week, and a lot of electrical rough in. HVAC is starting, and that's going to be a great showpiece for us once it gets. And it's only just a few blocks from our office, so
yeah.
That hotel is beautiful.
We
had a holiday dinner with I have 5 girlfriends I grew up with. And before we went to our holiday dinner, we were like, okay, we got to go check out the new Ritz. And they make a mean Manhattan in the hotel lobby.
Oh, that's good to know.
Just so you know.
I can only afford like a draft beer there, so.
Yeah,
Andrew,
you kind of
I will find out.
I'll pay for a proper drink.
You kind of need investors there to get a proper drink.
Yeah.
They are.
It's an expense, this type of ticket.
Yeah.
but service and quality is outstanding.
So the food hall could end up being a good topic for this because it's super challenging. Putting in 5 different restaurant vendors over a PT slab that's, punching holes for drain lines and water lines and utilities, it's proven to be quite the challenge. And changing floor levels throughout the entire space, it's a good one.
Well, you know where to find me. So all you got to do is say, okay, Cherise, it's done. I've got all the dirt for you.
Yep.
And
it's not my project, so you could get one of the other principals to
exactly.
Join in.
Yeah, we're not on it, so it would be a whole different team.
Well, I'll miss you, but
thank you so much.
I love meeting new people. So I always ask a broad industry question before my final question. And I try to sometimes pick something that relates to something we talked about. So I feel like I'm seeing more and more projects branching off of that traditional design bid build project delivery method. More construction managed jobs, lots more design build popping up. That is popping up more. And it's not just design build the HVAC system anymore. It's whole spaces, in some cases whole buildings. In your opinion, do you think that that's going to be our trend? Do you think that that's where we're moving to, and that the traditional design bid build won't be our prominent method down the road? Just in your opinion.
I think that depends on the sophistication of the client a lot, because I don't think it's for everyone. And I know that a lot of our clients would not thrive in this method of delivery. So it's tough to say whether it's going to become more or about the same.
I feel like in the private sector, which is usually where our clients are coming from, the financing is just so difficult right now. And they really want to know what their bottom line is going to be in order to get that loan or communicate with whoever's investing. And they really want as competitive of a price as they can get. And so even outside of just bidding for subcontracts, they're bidding for GCs, just because, those contingency numbers, those GC numbers can impact what direction they go in. And there's been a lot of sticker shock, I think, with construction material pricing still not coming down as much as maybe we wanted it to. We're still feeling impacts of the pandemic and just election year and all those types of things. So I'm seeing that people are getting a rough order of magnitude and panicking, and they want to know if someone else feels the same way. So they're getting kind of a second opinion. So it still feels like things are being hard bid because people need that data just for their financing.
I get sticker shock just going to the grocery store.
I know.
It's a good thing all I have to feed is me and my plant.
There seems to be a trend in public work that they're using the design build delivery method.
Really?
And I'm not quite sure how the nuts and bolts of it work. So you have 3 design build teams throwing a number at a project, and then they pull you in for a negotiation. I'm not sure, but it seems like that's happening more frequently.
I did public work for years and years and years. You talk about a learning experience. Do public work for a while. But typically the only places I was really seeing design build was like redoing the whole HVAC system for a building, where it was like a mechanical engine or a mechanical contractor that also had mechanical engineers, and they were, doing design build. And in those cases, in the public agency, they were getting prices from like 3.
So hard bids from 3. And well,
I personally haven't seen it in a public environment yet, where it's actual
the entire project.
Yeah. Where it goes beyond just like a specific system like that. But, who knows? obviously it's going to also depend on the local jurisdiction's rules and laws, because public work has a different set of rules in every state. Final question. Everybody gets this one. It's a little modified from what it used to be, so it's a little shorter. So we all hope to live a life that leaves some kind of contribution to make the world a better place. I know I certainly do. For you guys, personal or professional, doesn't have to be related to architecture. What do you hope your impact will be?
You want me to go?
Light, easy closing question.
Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah, wow.
Mine seems to change a lot. I mean, I went into this field because I wanted to create places for people to exist. I wanted to be part of the landscape of our community, and I thought that was a pretty interesting thing to do. But since I've been doing this a little bit longer, I'm still consistently surprised at how few females there are in this space. I think it's something like 23% of licensed architects are females. So be an architect, ladies. I'm trying to...
51% of architecture students are females.
Right. So the conversion is just not really happening. And I don't know if that shock factor of getting into the real world and dealing with permitting is what the problem is. It might be. But I'm trying to really mentor some of the ladies here and do more outreach to get more people involved in this field, because as much as it's not always sexy, it is a really amazing career, and I'm really proud of a lot of what I've accomplished. So I really hope that we can get those numbers up.
Well, I'm cheering for you.
Well,
thank you.